time. I'll call the meeting to order. Susan, would you take roll call, please?
Yep. Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili, Mr. Suda, Mr. Dantz,
Here.
Mr. Peterson,
Here.
Ms. Kaminsky,
Here.
Ms. Goodman.
Here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And I believe Mr. Gentili just joined via Zoom.
Okay, good.
Mr. Gentili,
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to find the link. I had to go back to an old prior month's one to find the Zoom
Yep.
link.
all right, perfect, thank you.
Welcome. Okay, moving on. Everybody's gotten a copy of the agenda, has had a chance to review it. Any changes, comments? If not, could I have a motion to approve it as presented?
So moved.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Agenda approved as presented. Public comment, no public today that I can see. Now moving on to the minutes of November. Everybody's had a chance to, has gotten a copy of that, has had a chance to review it. Any comments, changes, et cetera?
None. I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes.
Thank you, Karen. Do I hear a second?
Support.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passed. Moving on. Down to the treasurer's report. First item up is the November accounts payable. Assuming, I believe everybody's had gotten a copy of that, has had a chance to review it. The biggest item I see on there from previous months was the McGinnis drain assessment.
Yeah, that's same.
Right, same. Falls in there about this time every year. And what do we have this for, 10 years? I think it was 10 years.
Correct.
Okay. Barry, I was just looking at the runway airfield paint marking. Is that an old bill from last summer?
That is our match. So that's the 2.5% match
Okay.
on that grant closeout.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? If not, could I have a motion to approve as presented the accounts payable for November 2021? So moved.
Approved.
Support.
I second.
Thank you. We got 2 seconds there.
Oh, sorry.
Give it to Cindy, Susan.
Hey, who
Barry.
initiated?
Barry made a motion.
Okay,
And Cindy second.
okay.
Okay. Roll call?
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili,
Yes.
Mr. Suda, Mr. Dantz,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Ms. Goodman,
Yes.
and Ms. Kaminsky.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, moving on to the November 2021 revenues and expenses report, and also the trial balance report. Assuming, I presume everybody has gotten a copy of that, has had a chance to review it. Oh, also the other attachment to it, which was the rental and the fuel payments and other miscellaneous items. Any comments, changes, questions?
Susan, I do have a question, and
Mhm.
that's on the telephone bill.
Okay,
It's showing $338.47 for November. That doesn't make sense to me since we should be having a credit on that now.
Is that under utilities or it's just under
Under
telephone?
telephone.
Expenditures. About
I can look
midway
at-
down to expenditures.
Yeah, I can look at that and see what went in there.
Okay,
Cause, yeah, let me look at that. That might be for the full year, but let me take a look at that.
what I was thinking is that maybe because we had the credit in last year, that it was kind of a year-end thing where you moved.
I had to accrue it and then push it as
Maybe.
a prepaid, so it might just be that full dollar amount that's showing up in there, but I'll
Okay.
take a look at that. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? If not, could I have a motion to approve the November 2021 revenues and expenses and trial balance sheet and the other miscellaneous items as presented?
Approve.
What was that?
Yes, I approve.
Okay, you approve, we haven't had a motion yet.
Oh, sorry.
You're gonna make the motion?
Motion to approve, yes.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
I'll
Second.
support that.
Okay. Susan, could we have a roll call, please?
Yep, Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili,
Yes.
Mr. Suda, Mr. Dantz,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Ms. Kaminsky,
Yes.
and Ms. Goodman.
Yes.
Okay, moving on. Barry has informed me that Brandon from Right Side Design is sick and won't be able to join us either in person or on Zoom.
So he and I talked this morning and we just felt he really wants to do this in person. And so we decided that just pushing it to next month, especially in light of the fact that we might have new board members starting next month, it might make sense to have them exposed to the new information as well. So it's just kind of getting postponed for a month.
I would concur with your thoughts there. Okay, moving on. Thank you, Barry. Moving on, no executive committee, no budget committee, and we did have a capital projects committee on December 13th for a short bit to discuss some capital projects, and I think Barry put that on the email, so everybody's had a chance to pull it apart and look at it. What we're gonna do is, on new business, we're gonna have a little vote and approval for Barry to go ahead and move forward to get some, quotes for doing the roof, because what we decided to do was to at least do the roof on the T-hanger. It's not getting any better, and we're not gonna tear it down, so we've gotta do something, and we've got probably guessing about enough money to do that, and that'll improve the appearance of it also.
And the reason I asked for it to be a new business item is that that's not a budgeted item for the fiscal year. So I really wanted kind of the full board to acknowledge that we're essentially moving forward with a non-budgeted project with the plan of using our recovery funds, and we're anticipating about $45,000 additionally coming in this year that would cover that project.
Okay, Barry, I also, in the meantime, that little flyer I presented at the meeting the other day, nobody else is aware of that. But I did pull them up on the email, so I've got some more information on them, and that might be a good contact to get another quote. It looks like they're in the business of refurbishing old roofs, like we are experiencing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving on. Barry, you got the floor on your report.
Okay, give me a second and I'll get my report up on the screen. If you want to.
Barry, while you're doing that, can I interject real quick? I just wanted to, for the record, clarify the capital projects meeting was December 3rd,
Oh, did I
not
say?
the 13th. Yeah,
Oh, you're right.
And those in the conference room, there were copies of my report there, so I just want to make sure that everyone has a
You got it.
hard copy.
Yep.
And Andrew, you're right, I'm looking at my minutes that I wrote up, I put December 13th, didn't I?
yeah, I just feared, yeah, you were so hopeful for Christmas, you added 10 days.
Yes,
You're always looking ahead, Jerry.
I know it, I know it, I know it. Thank you for catching that.
Okay, my report then. So no airport incidents or accidents for the month. There was kind of an unusual item, which was our power outage that we had a week ago today. We were without power here for a little over 8 hours from just before noon until approximately 8 p.m. That caused those flights that afternoon to get canceled because we didn't have runway lights or really any way for TSA to screen passengers, or there's lots of things that don't work if we don't have power here. We actually have a backup generator as a wish list item, kind of in the long-term federally funded capital projects. It's kind of a low priority item for the feds. So, you know, eventually I think that's something we will have, but fortunately it's not something that impacts us that often, but when it does, it generally leads to flight cancellations. From a passenger and airline performance standpoint for the month of November, we ended up with 590 passengers for the month, which is good, not as good as I was predicting. And really the reason for that gets into the performance. Cape Air ended up for the month of November canceling 23% of their flights, which is basically a quarter. So, and the loads are right now very good. I mean, we have many flights that are sold out. So when you cancel a quarter of them, those passengers just can't roll over to the next flight because chances are the next flight is either sold out or only has 1, maybe 2 seats available. So a lot of those passengers ended up getting, you know, rerouted to other airports in the area to accommodate them. So it was unfortunate that as we started the month, we had for November advanced bookings of about 650. So at our last meeting, I was predicting about 700 total passengers, but we ended up with 590. So we lost passengers through the course of the month, as opposed to a more typical scenario where you're gaining some last minute bookings during the course of the month. Since Cape Air presented last month, kind of in the middle of this, you know, the reasons are the reasons that they were stating, you know, a mixture of things. There were some weather, you know, there were issues, I'll say, around their crews, and there were mechanical issues. It's a continuation of the issues we've had, but it really was our Cape Air's worst month so far from an overall performance standpoint, being able to complete flights and be on time. I'll touch more on maybe a little bit less of the negative of that later in my report. On the airfare side, let me see if I can rotate this so it comes up a little better fashion on the screen. So airfares still are looking, you know, very good, very competitive in the region. Of Grand Rapids, as is typical, is the least expensive. We're number 2, not that much different than Traverse City, but Muskegon is much more expensive right now than any of the other airports. And, we're coming up in the spring is when we're going to start the next iteration of our 2-year contract with DOT for air service. And, I'll just mention that Muskegon is served by SkyWest. And that is someone we've looked favorably at in the past. And this is, of all of the things with SkyWest, this is the issue that I am most concerned about with them. Well, I shouldn't say the only issue, but probably the biggest issue is they don't, or United through them tends not to price competitively. That they're a whole 30% more than we are right now. And getting close to doubling Grand Rapids in many cases.
Barry, I've got a question for you on that.
Yes.
Is that SkyWest service EAS supported to Muskegon?
Yes, it
or
is. That is
strictly
EAS.
market?
So it is
Pardon?
EAS, so it is fairly comparable to what we would have.
Okay, so if they're getting that subsidy, they can afford to probably keep that and push their other volume towards Grand Rapids then. Would that be a fair assumption?
I suspect that is United's thinking on that is they need fares in Grand Rapids to match the competition there, since they actually have competition. And therefore, what happens in Muskegon isn't really that important as long as the expenses get covered by the subsidy. So they're probably not really incentivized to making Muskegon successful in that scenario, or as successful as I'm sure they would want to be the case.
Thank you.
The bottom half here, which is a little bit cut off on my screen, up there I can go, is adding in a week's parking at the various airports, and that shifts things, more favorably to us since we're the only airport of the 4 that has free parking. That's one of the factors that can get looked at in making these developments. Any questions so far?
None?
Okay, then I'm going to rotate 3 times to get back to normal. Okay. So going on to the rest of my report, I've got no update on working with the sheriff on sorting out our law enforcement officer coverage here at the airport. He reached out to me last week and I haven't had a chance to get back to him yet. As it relates to Manistee Township, at their meeting last week on Thursday, the Township Board approved the new master plan that incorporates the desired airport protections in it. So that, what I'll call is kind of the first phase of this, has gone through. I'm going to probably give it a couple months before I then start pursuing the next level, which is really the more important level for us, which is getting their zoning to reflect these changes. I don't want to push too hard and seem ungrateful for what they've provided so far. No update on the hangar electrical. I am getting pings from consumers, so I know that consumers has been out here, I think, a couple times. But I don't know, I haven't heard anything from the contractor on when they plan to get that done. As it relates to this $45,000 in outstanding / anticipated funding from the CRISA grants and the round 3, there's no update yet on those. The third round is still pending state legislature appropriations for that. The Michigan Association of Airport Executives, which I'm a member of, it's kind of our airport lobbying group, sent out an update on this a couple weeks ago, gently suggesting that airports start pushing their state legislators to take this seriously, because there's, a lot of money just sitting on the sideline that can't be spent until they do some of this behind the scenes appropriations to allow the federal funding to get spent. I don't know the details of why, to use a federal grant, we have to have a state appropriation for it, but somehow, because of how those funds flow, it's a necessary thing. But I would still anticipate over the course of this coming year that those funds will come through. The airport inspection, I had reported last month that we had completed all of our tasks to close out the items. So all of the items that were identified in our inspection have been closed out. However, a new compliance letter was created, and that's to track this long-term project that's kind of come out of this, which is now to regrade our runway safety area and runway object-free area that's currently scheduled to be designed this fiscal year and then constructed in the following fiscal year. So they need basically a paper trail to track progress on that. So I've attached that to this report, as well as to the email I sent out earlier, that you have that. You can read that if you want to read the details in a little more detail.
Now, who put out this new compliance letter?
Our RFA inspector. So they closed out the last one because the item on that inspection compliance letter was that we needed to survey and identify if there were issues. Well, we surveyed and identified that there are issues, and now it's rolled into, well, now we need to do something about it, but we've got an extended period of time.
Okay, but all the tree problems and all that stuff has been covered.
Yeah, the trees, those issues got addressed.
Okay.
Yep, make sure I'm on the right slide. So I haven't heard from Prina Newhoff, but the last update I got is they were expected to get me the draft of our airport layout plan, which is technically a 2020 funded project, by the end of this month. The closer we get to the holidays, the more I suspect that may roll over into January, but I'm expecting it any day now. And that's important because our subsequent major funded projects can't be moved forward until this airport layout plan is approved. So this is kind of a bottleneck item, and Prina Newhoff is obviously very aware of that, and is incentivized, since all of their future work depends on this getting done in a timely fashion. The second phase of the PFAS testing project / grant started last week. Actually, if you look out on the airfield right now, there's a drilling rig kind of in the middle of the airfield that is drilling another test well they plan to be here all week, and we'll hopefully wrap that on-site work up this week. Then we have to wait for the testing results to come in on the borings and all of the things they're doing, and then wrap that up, and then hopefully get this grant closed out by April, which is when it needs to get closed out. I've been in contact with the state on whether or not there's leeway on extending that closeout date. At this point, they're obviously pushing to, they don't want to discuss that yet. I think there might be flexibility. It's just, I'm not concerned really on our side. I'm concerned really more of once we get everything put together, just how long it's going to take the state on their side to actually finish things up.
Barry, is there any delays, being caused by these guys out drilling in the field out here?
Nope. The locations were chosen such that it wouldn't have impacts to operations. The way we're doing, or the way we've agreed to do things is that every night they take down the drilling rig, so you don't have a 25-foot tower kind of sitting there in the middle of the airfield.
Okay.
Even though technically it's probably allowed where it is, I just feel better not having tall things sticking up that aren't expected. So yeah, we're okay on that. The phase two, I just kind of fill people in. So phase one was really about determining whether or not we had any PFAS here, which we knew we did because it has been used for firefighting purposes on the airport. Phase one verified that. Phase two is about basically Eagle's review of the preliminary phase one data. And basically they requested, I think, 3 additional wells and testing be drilled based on the location of what was found where, to see if things are progressing to known water sources. So one well was drilled out near River Road, basically between us and the homes along River Road, to see if any possible contamination would be migrating towards their groundwater wells. The well they're working on right now is between us and the city water well. And this one's taking a little bit longer just because the depth of the city water well is significantly deep. So they've got a much more work to do to kind of test all the layers going down to a deeper depth. And I forget where the third one was. But anyway, that's what this phase two is about.
Okay.
Moving on then to the Cape Air Air Service. So some of this is going to be a repeat. So nothing has magically fixed itself since Cape Air presented last month, telling us about their challenges. In fact, November was worse in many ways. This is really now 4 months in a row that they've struggled. Basically starting in August, things took a noticeable decrease and basically has continued since then. However, November is they're still doing well when they fly. I was predicting last month that this November would be our second best, with roughly around 700 passengers, which if they hadn't canceled as many flights as they did, would have been a very achievable goal. Canceling a quarter of your flights, that pushed them down, but it's really still in the ballpark of, some of our best number of passengers we've had over the course of now about 60 years. November load factor, and load factor is basically the percent of seats that are filled, was 79% in November, which is the highest percentage of any month since Cape Air has started. So they are filling seats. We are selling out flights. I looked this morning, and over the next 7 days, we've got about 60% of our flights are sold out. So the issues aren't around the type of service, the fares, the connectivity, all of those things are working and creating the interest and the demand. It's just the operational side that has been lacking and continues to be an issue. I'm again predicting that December should surpass all previous Decembers with the exception of the 2011 Frontier year. And so far this month, they have been doing better in completing flights than November. Still not where I want them to be, but this time of year, weather tends to be more of a factor. So we've had cancellations because of weather. As I mentioned earlier, we had a cancellation because of power being out here. So there are other factors that play into the overall, but still a good percentage have tended to be things that they should be able to operationally prevent.
Barry, they're still flying a lot of their old planes, aren't they?
Yes, and that is by design, because of the mechanical issues that the Technim has had. They decided, and I agreed, let's try to put in place the environment that's most likely to be successful. So we're flying the 402s until they believe that the operational performance of the Technims would be on par with the 402s. So I don't think that that's going to be all winter. I don't want it to be all winter because the customer perception of the 402 versus Technim is also a factor. So, there's a degree of desirability, and having canceled flights is by far the biggest impact. But if we can get past that, then the cabin and the experience in the Technim is definitely preferred over the 402.
Correct.
Nothing really new here. This is just a reminder of what our off-season schedule is with the 2 daily flights. Their current fares being at $59 through the end of December. Starting January, they go back to, or at least currently are planning to go back to their normal fare scale, which starts at $59, but then goes up as seats are sold. Then the last thing I have is on the marketing front, just kind of the second bullet here. We are working with Cape Air to do, this is something we've traditionally done for the last 7-8 years, is a winter solstice fare sale on the winter solstice, December 21st. This year's fare sale will be all seats are available at $49. So actually less than we're currently selling things for. It's a 1-day fare sale, and basically that'll be for all seats through the next 3 months, basically through winter. And then the reminder that we're moving the updated the marketing plan update to next meeting. That's my report. Does anyone have any questions?
Not from us. Thank you, Barry. Oh, one thing I do have, this letter on the back part of your report here, is that what you were referring to, your compliance letter?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, I just now saw it, okay. Okay, got it. Okay, moving on. Old business, unfinished business, none that I'm aware of. So we'll move on to new business, and you see the blip there, a recommendation from Capital Projects Committee to paint the roof on number 10 T-hanger for this upcoming year. And, what we're looking for is to get approval from the board here to allow the group or the funds for that to come from the recovery grant round 2 and also recovery grant round 3. Am I correct in that, Barry?
Yep, I mean, at this point, you know, until we get firm bids, we're not going to know exactly what the project will cost. Given what we've done in the past on this topic, our working assumption is around a $30,000 expense on this. We've probably got about $45,000 in funding, so that should fit within that. We'll obviously need to come back to the board for full approval once we have gone to bid. I just felt it would be, you know, better to make sure that the board was on board with spending this money in this way, or anticipating to spend it in this way, since it's not a budgeted item.
I have a question. This is Susan. So we set up that capital fund 481 for the airport.
Yep.
I'm assuming then this is gonna get paid from the capital fund 481.
Yes.
So when you guys get ready to approve that, you'll have to make sure that you say this is coming from Fund 481, the capital improvement, and then at the same time, when you approve that, you're gonna have to approve a transfer to that capital fund project fund, the 481. So that gives me permission to move that money over, and then once that bill, if you guys move forward, and then once that bill comes, then I'll pay that out of that fund 481. Okay?
Okay.
So technically, right now, you're just looking for consensus today
Right.
to utilize
Yep.
that money, correct, Barry?
Correct.
Yes. Yep.
Gotta use it somewhere.
So, can I ask for a,
You're just looking for consensus.
okay. So everybody on board that we're talking about that is generally has feeling it's a yes to go ahead and go forward with this? I'm
Yes.
assuming so. I've heard no nays on that, so Barry, yes, we're ready to go then.
Okay. After I get back from the holidays, I will start working on that, putting together a RFP on that.
Okay.
I guess I do have a follow-up question, and this, I probably should have asked this back in the committee report on this general topic, but given that there are other expenditures around refurbishing these T-hangers, there had been a suggestion that maybe we put together a request to the county for them to fund this out of their relief funding. Is that something that the county commissioners feel would still be appropriate or not? I don't know.
Historically, Barry, we have done things over time to help assist getting things taken care of on the airport. I think it's always worked out. I don't see why we can't. I don't know about one hit and one shot, but, you know, if you're looking for a $500,000 project, unless it was life and death of the airport no longer to be in existence, I wouldn't think that would be appropriate. But if it's something we can work on and schedule it over time, I would think that would be worth pursuing.
Okay. So I guess I defer that to then the committee members for the next time we meet to figure out how we want to move forward with kind of the remaining items that are on kind of that list.
Okay. So right now, let's get that roof painted and make it look a little more presentable.
Yep.
And repair the holes and the leaks.
It's just maintenance, it's the maintenance that's long overdue.
Correct. Okay. Any other comments by, board members?
To me, the goal here is to try to get to that, 10,000 emplanements. And it's a slow process, I know, but to me, that's the cherry on top. And that's gonna change the dynamics financially for us enormously.
That is correct.
Correct.
There's something, what the heck was it?
Closer than we have been the last 2 years, though.
Very true.
Well, it's been, better than the last couple of years.
I can tell you, we did have a commissioner quite concerned, cause, they were about stranded in Chicago, on a flight trying to come back from Cape Air, and I've heard that, it's been an ongoing story, but it's nothing new that we haven't heard, it's just,
It's just
people
the
that have a
longer,
louder voice than others.
yep, and the longer that goes on, the more people it impacts and the more
worse.
damage that's done to the reputation of the carrier and then ultimately also the airport.
Yep.
You know, I was just, I knew somebody that came in to the airport on Saturday, and I was kind of thinking that perhaps they wouldn't get there because I know there was some big winds down through Chicago area and through the lower part of the state and so on. But the plane came in on time, and so I was thinking that maybe Cape Air had finally found another airport in the Chicago area that would allow them to continue operations when the winds were high. As they explained before, that they don't quite, they're not compatible with the right runway that they open in Chicago when there's high winds.
Probably depends on the, direction of the wind.
It does, right.
So Jerry, I can fill in a little bit on that. Whoever you're referring to on Saturday, they were lucky because 2 of the 4 flights occurred, 2 were canceled.
Okay,
So
I was
The
thinking.
morning flight out occurred on time. The plane then spent the day in Chicago, and then the evening flight back from Chicago happened. But the 2 middays when the winds were strongest did not. Those
Well,
were
it was
canceled.
the evening flight,
Yep.
so that's where it was at.
So the winds did impact, but not that passenger's particular flight.
Okay. So if that's it, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all.
I'm off to town. Well,
Off to
beautiful.
town, okay, yes.